The world sounded broken. The shrieking of sirens tangled with the distant wail of a fire truck, the crackle of broken power lines, and the wind's dying howl as it faded into exhausted silence over the battered city. Dust choked the air, turning the morning sun into a dull red bruise behind layers of storm-battered clouds. Emily stumbled forward, every step crunching on shattered glass, splintered wood, and pieces of someone else's life blown miles from home. She couldn't breathe, or maybe she just forgot how, somewhere between the roar of the tornado and the sudden awful quiet. She wiped at her face, hands shaking, sticky with sweat and mud. Every muscle screamed to sit down, give up, let the numbness take over, but she kept moving, not even sure why. The world she'd known yesterday was gone, peeled away in a handful of endless minutes. Emily blinked at the devastation of Tulsa's street, each ruined building a monument to what she'd lost. Her phone was dead. Her mind circled the same desperate thoughts, looping over her family's faces. Mom, Dad, safe in California, no idea their daughter had been dropped into the center of a nightmare. She turned a corner, barely noticing the tangled wreck of a mailbox jammed through a car's windshield. That's when she saw her. Blocking the middle of the street, trembling, caked in mud and debris, was a brown mare. Big, powerful, wild-eyed, her coat streaked with dust and blood. The animal stood rigid, ears pinned, every muscle tense as if waiting for something to leap out of the chaos. The mare's mane clung in wet ropes to her neck. Her eyes rolled white with terror and confusion, but she didn't bolt. Instead, she planted herself in Emily's path, as if she'd been waiting for her all along. Emily's breath caught. The horse was huge up close, a living thing in the middle of a world that felt otherwise dead. Emily froze, uncertain, heart hammering. They stared at each other, human and horse, two strangers connected by the same wild, panicked energy that crackled through the storm's aftermath. Emily swallowed, whispering, "Easy, girl, easy." The words felt silly, pointless, but she tried anyway. She held out her palm, open and shaking, fingers splayed. The mare stared. For a moment, Emily thought the animal would bolt, crash away into the chaos. Instead, the horse, later she'd learn her name was Maple, lowered her big head and pressed her nose gently to Emily's hand. A tremor went through Emily, like electricity, and something inside her cracked. She was still alive. So was this horse. Both of them battered, both of them torn from whatever safety they'd known. Emily felt a wave of emotion, thick and choking. For the first time since the tornado, she realized she wasn't alone. The world around them erupted again with noise, shouts, a child crying somewhere behind a collapsed porch, the relentless shriek of distant rescue sirens. Red and blue lights flickered across ruined houses, painting everything in sickly, desperate colors. Emily flinched as a slab of roof groaned and slid off a crushed truck nearby. Dust whirled up in choking clouds. Maple shifted, but she didn't bolt. She pressed closer, her big eyes searching Emily's face. In the chaos, they made a strange pair, a mud-streaked, trembling young woman and a battered, wild-eyed mare, both lost, both waiting for a sign that things might ever be normal again. A new burst of wind drove grit into Emily's teeth. She coughed, wiping her eyes. "What do we do now?" She didn't expect an answer, but Maple snorted softly, as if to say, "Just follow me." Emily took a step forward, her hand resting on Maple's neck. The mare turned, nudging Emily forward with a gentle insistence. Emily hesitated. Her mind screamed to curl up, to give in to fear. But something about Maple's presence, her solid weight, her calm determination, cut through the panic like a lifeline. Sirens wailed louder, closer now, Emily heard the rumble of heavy boots and the barked orders of firefighters sweeping the block. Still, nobody stopped to notice the girl and the horse, two survivors standing together in the ruins. Emily glanced back once, feeling the ache of everything she'd lost, her apartment, her friends, the safety of being just another face in the crowd. Maple looked at her, steady and sure, and for a moment, Emily saw her own pain reflected in those huge brown eyes. Maybe, she thought, it was possible to go on, even now. Maybe hope could start small, a whisper, a nudge, the brush of a horse's breath against her palm. Somewhere close by, a scream cut through the sirens. Maple's ears pricked forward. Emily's heart pounded. The horse turned, muscles bunching, and without warning began to move. Not away, but forward, deeper into the chaos, following some silent instinct. Emily hesitated just a second, then ran after her, lungs burning, heart racing. It was the first real decision she'd made since the storm hit. She didn't know where they were going or why, only that in this moment, she was moving toward hope, not away from it. And in the shattered dawn of a ruined city, that was enough. The mare was moving fast, her hooves crunching through scattered debris, weaving a winding path down what was left of Maple Street. Emily sprinted after her, tripping over fallen branches, slipping on wet grass and splintered shingles, her heart thumping wildly in her chest. Every muscle ached, every breath tasted of dust and adrenaline. But something kept her legs moving. Maybe the horse's desperate urgency. Maybe the sudden purpose she felt after hours of hollow panic. She dodged a tangle of downed wires, her sneakers squelching in floodwater. Maple broke into a trot, then a canter, her mane streaming back, flanks streaked with mud. Emily could barely keep up, nearly losing her more than once as the horse plunged through a ruined yard and into a narrow alley littered with twisted garbage cans and a child's plastic tricycle half buried under bricks. "Wait, slow down," Emily gasped. But Maple didn't stop, only glanced back, eyes wild and insistent. The horse's urgency was contagious. Emily pushed harder, ignoring the sting in her ankle, the scratch of branches whipping her arms. Somewhere in the distance, sirens still screamed, voices barked orders, and the city's pain pressed in from all sides. As she squeezed past a fence that had been half torn from the ground, Emily caught up just in time to see Maple suddenly halt, hooves digging into muddy earth. The mare's head snapped up, ears pricked toward a crumpled porch, where the remains of a small house leaned at an impossible angle. There, barely visible under a heap of snapped boards and insulation, was a boy. Tiny, unmoving, his face hidden by a mop of dirty blonde hair. For an instant, everything else faded. Emily rushed forward, her hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped to her knees. Maple pawed at the earth, nickering, and the boy stirred, a soft whimper escaping his lips. Emily dropped beside him, ignoring the prick of nails and the icy water soaking through her jeans. Hey, it's okay. I'm here. I'm going to help you." She pulled at the boards, her fingers numb, splinters digging deep. The boy's small hands clutched something, a faded toy horse, dirt-streaked but still whole, jammed into the crook of his arm. He wouldn't let go, even as Emily tried to pull him free. Her chest tightened. "You're so brave," she whispered, "but I need you to help me just a little, okay?" She glanced up at Maple, whose huge head was only inches away, breath coming in slow, steady puffs. Maple lowered her nose, bumping the toy horse gently, as if offering comfort. The boy looked up, eyes wide and terrified, but when he saw Maple, something shifted. He reached out, trembling, and grabbed hold of Maple's mane. With a deep breath, Emily worked the last board loose, bracing herself as the wreckage shifted. The porch groaned but held. She slid her arms under the boy and pulled inch by inch until finally, with a gasp, he tumbled free. He clung to her, sobbing, but still wouldn't let go of Maple's mane or the toy horse. Maple stood absolutely still, as if she knew how much this mattered. Somewhere behind them someone shouted. Flashing red and blue lights flickered on the wet street as a pair of firefighters came running, splashing through the water, radios crackling at their hips. "Over here," Emily called, waving one arm while the other held the boy tight. The rescuers knelt beside her, checking the boy for injuries, wrapping him in a scratchy orange blanket. Emily's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The boy's name, she learned, was Noah. He wouldn't speak at first, but when a paramedic tried to lead him away, he shrieked and threw himself against Maple's side. "Don't leave her," he cried, voice raw. "Please, don't leave her behind." Tears streaked his muddy cheeks as he buried his face in Maple's shoulder, tiny fingers tangled in her mane. Emily felt a surge of protectiveness, not just for Noah, but for Maple too. These two lost souls needed each other, maybe more than they even knew. The firefighters exchanged glances, unsure what to do. Emily stepped forward, speaking quietly. "She found him. She led me right here," Emily said, her voice hoarse. "Let him say goodbye at least." But Noah wouldn't let go, and neither would Maple. The mare nickered, her eyes gentle and deep, and for a long moment everyone seemed to understand. In this chaos, rules didn't matter, only what could be saved. The rescuers relented, letting Noah stroke Maple's neck as they checked him for injuries and tried to coax him away. Emily stepped back, heart pounding with relief and awe. She watched as Maple stood protectively over the boy, her massive body a living shield. One firefighter, a tall woman with mud streaked across her cheeks, looked at Emily and shook her head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like that," she said. "That horse knew. She really knew." News traveled fast in a disaster. By the time Emily and Maple made their way back toward the street, whispers had already begun. A mysterious brown mare and a stranger had saved a child's life. Strangers called out, pointing at Maple, sharing scraps of food, offers of water. Someone pressed a towel into Emily's hands. Someone else handed her a bottle of water. She drank, barely tasting it, her mind spinning. It didn't feel real, none of it did. But the ache in her arms and the weight of Noah's gratitude said otherwise. As rescue workers gathered Noah and took him to safety, Maple turned back to Emily, her big eyes searching, her breath warm on Emily's neck. Emily stroked Maple's nose, feeling a strange, unexpected surge of hope. In the worst moment of her life, she'd found something worth following. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something that could pull her through the storm. She wrapped her arms around Maple's neck, holding tight. For the first time since the world fell apart, Emily felt herself begin to believe in tomorrow. After the frantic pace of rescue and adrenaline faded, the world seemed to slow. Emily followed Maple's steady lead through streets washed pale by morning rain and past battered streetlights. They reached the high school, now a refuge for the storm's survivors. People moved in slow, stunned clusters. Families clustered around cots. Neighbors shared silent coffee, and children stared with hollow eyes at the new and frightening world. The Red Cross had transformed the gym into a patchwork shelter, with lines of cots, rows of folding chairs, and stacks of blankets in every color and size. Emily hesitated at the door, unsure if she and Maple belonged, but no one questioned her. A volunteer handed her a towel and a bottle of water, then simply nodded at Maple, as if a horse walking through the wreckage was just another part of life after the storm. Emily led Maple to a quiet corner near the bleachers. The gym buzzed with the voices of people making desperate calls, searching for loved ones, or simply sitting with their heads in their hands. Emily looked at her phone, heart thumping as she tried again to reach her parents. No signal, no answer, only the dead, silent ache of distance. Maple nudged her gently, as if to pull her back from despair. The mare shook the dust from her coat, sending a fine spray of mud onto Emily's jeans. Emily managed a weak smile, grateful for the distraction. She rummaged through her backpack, offering Maple the last of her granola bars. Maple chewed, crunching contentedly, her body finally relaxing as she realized they were safe. For now. That night, sleep was a stranger. The gym lights never really dimmed, and the air was thick with the sounds of 100 restless souls. Maple stood beside Emily's cot, shifting her weight occasionally, her big eyes keeping gentle watch. At some point, children began drifting over, drawn by the comforting sighs and steady presence of the mare. Maple lowered her head, letting small hands braid her tangled mane, nuzzle against her broad shoulder, and whisper secret fears into her ear. A tiny boy pressed his face to Maple's neck and cried until his breathing slowed, as if the rhythm of the mare's heart could anchor him to the world again. Emily watched all this from her seat on the bleachers, arms wrapped tight around her knees. She recognized the pain in the children's faces, the shell-shocked look, the flicker of hope every time a door opened and a new arrival stumbled in. She realized she'd spent so much time running from her own loss that she'd forgotten how many others carried the same weight. In Maple, the children found what she'd found: solidarity, comfort, a silent companion who asked nothing but gave everything. Later, as the gym finally quieted, Emily slid off the bleachers and knelt beside Maple. She stroked the mare's mane, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I don't know if I'll ever get home, or if home is even there anymore." Maple nudged her shoulder, eyes soft and understanding. Emily let the tears fall then, silent and warm, the kind that don't ask for comfort, but find it anyway in a friend's closeness. Dawn crept in with a pale pink light. Emily was startled awake by the low voice of a volunteer. The woman held out an old halter, blue, frayed, with a brass tag. "We found this near the Miller Ranch," she said. "The tag says Maple." "Is she yours?" Emily shook her head, but her hand closed around the halter. Maple looked up, recognizing her name, nostrils flaring as she sniffed the familiar leather. The story came tumbling out. The Miller Ranch destroyed, most of the horses gone, and Maple left alone, a storm orphan with no one left to claim her. As the day stretched on, Emily found herself unable to rest. The gym was filled with stories of loss, reunion, heartbreak, and unexpected kindness. Maple remained a gentle presence, weaving among the cots, letting strangers lay their heads against her flank. Children drew pictures of her, taping them to the wall with bits of medical tape. A little girl with a missing tooth handed Emily a crumpled note. "Thank you for saving us. Maple is magic." That night, as rain pattered on the gym roof, Emily and Maple sat together on the cold metal bleachers. Emily spoke softly, telling Maple everything she'd never told anyone, about the storm, her parents, the dreams that had brought her to Tulsa, and the guilt she felt for surviving when others hadn't. Maple listened, ears flicking, her breath slow and even. Emily ran her fingers through Maple's damp mane, letting the horse's quiet strength calm her trembling hands. They stayed like that until exhaustion finally pulled Emily under. For the first time since the tornado, she slept soundly, cradled in the gentle certainty that she was not alone. As she drifted off, she realized something had shifted. The world outside might still be broken, but inside the shelter, in the simple act of sharing pain and comfort, healing had quietly begun. For Emily, for Maple, and for everyone trying to find their way back from the storm. Morning broke gray and sullen, light leaking through the school gym's high windows in thin strips. Emily barely remembered falling asleep, curled up with her blanket on a thin cot, Maple standing sentinel just feet away. There was something soothing in the rhythm of the mare's breathing, the rise and fall as steady as ocean waves. The hours after sunrise blurred into a long shuffle of volunteers, the aroma of burnt coffee, and a search for anything that resembled normalcy. Somewhere between helping distribute supplies and taking Maple outside for air, Emily was approached by an older man with a Red Cross badge clipped to his shirt. He was holding something in his hands, a battered, mud-stained halter with faded blue webbing and a brass tag. "Excuse me, miss," he said, voice soft as he offered her the halter. "Is this yours? Or I guess hers. Found it tangled in the debris north of here, near the old Miller Ranch. Tag says Maple." Emily ran her fingers across the brass letters. Maple. The mare shifted her weight, ears flicking at the sound of her name. "It's hers," Emily said, surprised at how right that felt. The man gave her a gentle nod. "She's lucky to have found someone," he added. "Not every animal made it out. I heard Miller Ranch took the worst of it. Heard they lost almost everything." His words hung in the air, heavy and unfinished. Curiosity gnawed at Emily. After Maple had been fed, she asked around about Miller Ranch. Eventually, a volunteer pointed her to a woman in a cowboy hat, hair still streaked with drywall dust. The woman's voice was quiet, edged with sorrow as she spoke. "That mare. She belonged to Jed Miller," she said. "Retired rodeo man. He loved that horse more than anything, ever since she was a foal. Storm came through. He wouldn't leave the barn. Stayed with the animals." Emily's heart twisted. Jed Miller hadn't made it. Neither had most of the horses. Maple's trembling when they first met made sense now. Her loyalty, her refusal to leave behind anyone lost, came from knowing what it meant to be left alone. Late that afternoon, Emily led Maple through the broken city streets toward what was left of Miller Ranch. The air was heavy with humidity and the scent of wet earth. She didn't expect a funeral or a monument, just a moment to acknowledge what had been lost. Maple seemed to know where she was going. They passed splintered fences and a heap of twisted metal that once had been a barn. Wildflowers struggled up through cracks in the mud. At the edge of the field, Emily stopped. She let Maple graze, her hand resting on the mare's shoulder, sharing a silence that said what words couldn't. There were echoes here. A rope fence, a collapsed grandstand, boots abandoned near a shattered post. Emily closed her eyes. She pictured Jed Miller's strong hands and the way he must have laughed when Maple won her first ribbon. She felt a strange sense of kinship with him, a love for a horse that now tethered her to hope, even in heartbreak. Emily knelt and pressed her palm to the muddy earth. "Thank you," she whispered, "for loving her, for teaching her how to trust." The wind moved softly, stirring Maple's mane. The mare lowered her head, standing beside Emily as if she too understood the depth of their shared grief. Time passed. Maybe an hour, maybe just a few minutes. Emily let herself cry, not the frantic tears of panic, but the slow, aching kind that come when you let yourself remember. Maple nudged her gently, her warm breath a reminder that life moved on, even in the shadows of loss. As the sun slipped behind a haze of storm clouds, Emily made a decision. She would not just keep Maple. She would trust her, follow wherever the mare's instincts led. Maple had shown her a kind of courage she hadn't known she possessed. They'd survived the storm. Now, together, they'd face whatever came next. Walking back, Emily felt lighter, as if she'd left some of her sorrow behind at the ranch. Maple walked beside her, steady and sure. They didn't need words. The rhythm of their footsteps and the quiet strength of their bond said everything. Tulsa was a city of survivors now, a city of ghosts and hope tangled together. Emily was no longer just a girl lost in the storm. With Maple by her side, she was something new, someone willing to follow, to grieve, and to begin again. By dusk, as they reached the edge of the makeshift shelter, Emily stopped and looked up at the sky, a bruised violet with streaks of fading gold. She slipped the blue halter over Maple's head, fastening the brass tag that caught the last light of the sun. "Come on, girl," she murmured. "Wherever you go, I'll go too." Maple snorted, as if in agreement. Inside, the gym's noise felt distant. Emily settled into her cot, her head on a rolled-up jacket, Maple's steady presence just feet away. For the first time, Emily let herself hope that healing was possible, that the worst losses could shape the strongest bonds. And as she drifted to sleep, she knew with certainty that whatever storms waited on the horizon, she and Maple would face them side by side. A restless energy hummed through the shelter. By sunrise, word had spread that volunteer teams were forming to search the neighborhoods hit hardest by the tornado. Emily woke before dawn, the old gym already buzzing with the shuffle of boots, the clink of donated flashlights, and the low, determined voices of people refusing to give up on neighbors still unaccounted for. She watched Maple nosing at a pile of donated apples, ears flicking to the sounds of children laughing softly nearby, and felt a surge of certainty. She and Maple couldn't just sit back and wait. They had to do something. Emily approached a group gathered near the double doors, most of them strangers, but already bound by a shared sense of urgency. "I'd like to help," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "And I have a horse. She's smart. She finds people." There were a few skeptical looks. What could one mare do in a field of chaos? But a wiry man with a Red Cross armband just nodded. "We'll take all the help we can get," he said, pressing a battered walkie-talkie into her hands. Maple seemed to understand the moment, head held high as she followed Emily out into the muggy morning. The city looked different now, less like a disaster zone, more like a place where people had decided to rebuild. The wind carried the scent of damp earth, smoke, and wildflowers crushed by the storm. Emily and Maple joined a caravan of battered trucks and clusters of volunteers on foot, each one heading out with a clipboard, a map, and a heavy heart. Their first stop was a cul-de-sac where the tornado's path had been especially cruel. Maple moved with surprising care, picking her way through splintered fences and the soggy remains of flower beds. Emily called out, her voice echoing, "Hello? Anyone here? Rescue team!" For a while there was only silence, punctuated by the distant creak of a swinging porch swing and the sudden flutter of birds startled from a broken tree. Then Maple's ears pricked forward, and she snorted, pawing at the ground. Emily followed her gaze to a barn at the edge of a half-collapsed property. The structure leaned dangerously, its roof a jagged smile of exposed rafters. "Is someone there?" Emily called, nerves jangling. Maple stepped closer, refusing to leave the barn's entrance. From somewhere inside came a muffled sound, a voice, thin and strained. Emily's heart pounded as she ducked under the sagging door. Inside, the light was strange, filtered through cracks in the battered walls, A pile of hay and boards had collapsed in one corner, and beneath the tangle, an elderly woman lay pinned, one arm stretched out, her face streaked with dirt but alert. "Help me, please," the woman croaked. "I'm here. I'll get help," Emily promised, crawling forward on hands and knees. The smell of gasoline and wet wood filled her nostrils. Maple stood at the doorway, her presence a calm anchor in the panic. "It's okay," Emily said softly, as much for herself as the woman. "I won't leave you." The boards were heavier than they looked. Emily's arms shook as she shoved, dirt crumbling in her hair, sweat running down her neck. "You can do this," she muttered, teeth clenched. Maple nickered, the sound echoing in the quiet barn, as if cheering her on. The old woman reached up, her hand grasping Emily's wrist. "Thank you, dear," she whispered. Footsteps thundered outside. 2 volunteers burst in, their eyes wide when they saw the wreckage. "Over here!" Emily called, her voice cracking. Together they lifted the last board, freeing the woman at last. She sobbed, trembling as she was wrapped in a blanket and carried out, her hand never letting go of Emily's for an instant. As they made their way to the ambulance, the woman glanced back at Maple and gave a weak wave. "That horse. She wouldn't leave, would she?" she said, her voice full of wonder. "No, ma'am," Emily replied, wiping her brow. "She doesn't leave anyone behind." Word spread quickly. By the end of the afternoon, people who had never spoken before were sharing stories. How they'd seen the brown mare nosing through the ruins. How she'd stood guard until help arrived. Emily and Maple became a fixture on the search teams, the pair welcomed with nods and hopeful smiles. It felt like a strange kind of family, this tribe of survivors, each one battered but not broken, each one determined to pull someone else from the rubble. As dusk settled over Tulsa, Emily and Maple walked back to the shelter together, trailing a line of grateful volunteers and neighbors. The gym was brighter that night. Someone had found a working radio, and a country song warbled through the loudspeakers. Children drew pictures of Maple on scraps of cardboard. A teenager asked if she could braid a ribbon into the mare's tail. Everywhere Emily looked, she saw people glancing at her, and Maple with a kind of quiet respect. Before bed, the shelter manager found her by the exit. "You and that horse. You're welcome to stay as long as you need," she said, her voice kind. "Folks say she's got a nose for trouble, and we could use more of that." Emily smiled, brushing Maple's mane as the mare leaned her head into her side. "We're not going anywhere, but," she promised. She felt a surge of gratitude for this city, these strangers, and the horse who'd shown her the way through grief and into something bigger than herself. As the stars appeared beyond the broken windows, Emily realized that for the first time since the storm, she felt at home. She looked at Maple, her partner and guide, and whispered, "Tomorrow, we'll help again, wherever you lead." Maple's ear flicked, as if she understood. In the heart of disaster, a new bond was forged. A community not just of survivors, but of searchers, healers, and the quiet, steadfast hope that sometimes comes on 4 muddy hooves. The week after the tornado brought fresh challenges. Stifling days heavy with humidity, restless nights, and the constant shuffle of cleanup and rebuilding. Even as the city slowly stitched itself together, everyone felt on edge, waiting for the next disaster to fall out of the darkening sky. For Emily, every day with Maple brought new reminders that healing was messy, unpredictable, and full of risk. The river was rising. After days of rain, the Arkansas River's muddy waters clawed at its banks, swelling past road signs and creeping over the roots of trees. Rescue teams warned everyone to stay away, but desperation and curiosity drew people too close. That night, The rain drummed on the roof of the high school shelter like the anxious tapping of fingers. Emily sat on her cot, half awake, listening to the storm. Most of the shelter's residents slept fitfully, tossing and murmuring, reliving the tornado in their dreams. Maple was uneasy. She paced the hallway near the emergency exit, hooves tapping on linoleum, head swinging toward the doors. Emily sat up, blinking. "Maple, what is it?" she whispered, shivering a little in the damp air. The mare snorted, pawed at the door, and tossed her head. Lightning flickered through the windows, illuminating Maple's silhouette. Muscular, restless, alert. Emily's heart quickened. In all the days she'd known her, Maple had never acted like this unless something was truly wrong. Without thinking, Emily slipped on her battered sneakers, wrapped herself in a rain jacket, and clipped Maple's halter. As soon as the door swung open, a rush of cool, rain-soaked wind slapped her face. Maple surged forward, leading Emily into the wild night. The storm's fury was nothing like the tornado. This was the relentless, pulsing drum of rain and the wild rush of swollen water, hungry and loud. Emily splashed through ankle-deep puddles, her flashlight cutting shaky circles in the dark. Maple moved with purpose, her nose low, nostrils flaring as she traced the scent of something urgent. They crossed an empty parking lot, down a gravel embankment, and onto the riverside road, now nearly submerged in the muddy current. A gust of wind bent the trees, whipping rain sideways. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched Maple's mane, slipping and sliding through the muck. "Where are we going, girl?" she shouted over the roar of the river. "Please don't let this be a wild goose chase." Then she heard it. A faint, desperate cry, barely audible over the storm. Maple's ears flicked, and she pushed forward, hooves splashing. There, half submerged beside a stalled pickup truck, Emily spotted movement. A flash of tiny arms waving, a glint of pale hair. Adrenaline jolted her fully awake. "Oh God, there's someone out there," she gasped. The water rose above her knees as she waded closer, every step a battle against the angry river. Maple plunged into the current, bracing herself, unwavering even as the water slapped her flanks. In the cab of the truck, a baby, maybe a year old, wrapped in a soaked yellow blanket, sat screaming, face pressed to the window. The door was jammed, the water nearly up to the seats. Emily's mind raced, medical training fighting with raw terror. She gritted her teeth, found a jagged rock, and smashed at the window until the glass cracked and gave. Rain and river water surged in, icy cold. "Hang on," Emily called, her voice shaking. Maple stood beside her, planted firm, the one thing in this wild night that wouldn't budge. Emily climbed onto the door, reached inside and pulled the baby out, cradling the child to her chest. The baby wailed, tiny fists clutching at Emily's jacket, eyes wide with primal fear. For a moment, Emily thought her legs would give out. Her breath came fast, panic clawing at her throat. Then Maple was there, solid as a wall, her body breaking the river's current, steadying Emily with her broadside. Emily pressed her cheek to Maple's wet neck, using the mare's strength to anchor herself. "I've got you. We're going to be okay," she whispered, voice raw. With Maple beside her, Emily found her footing and stumbled up the embankment, never letting go of the baby. On the road above, rescue lights flashed blue and red in the pouring rain. A crew rushed down with a stretcher and towels. Emily handed the baby over, her arms aching, clothes soaked through, heart pounding. The mother appeared, shrieking with relief, clutching her child as Emily slumped to her knees. Someone wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, but she barely felt it. All she could see was Maple, standing calmly in the downpour, eyes shining with an uncanny calm, as if to say, "This is what we do. This is why we're here." The news spread like wildfire. By morning, photos of the hero mare and the soaked, exhausted young woman were circulating on every phone in the shelter. Strangers hugged Emily, children crowded around Maple, and a local reporter asked for their story. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like a lost soul swept along by fate. She felt like someone who mattered, someone who'd chosen to act, to risk, to save. The rain finally slowed, and the river receded, leaving behind a city bruised but grateful. Maple became a symbol, not just of survival, but of hope, determination, and the quiet, everyday courage that held the broken pieces of Tulsa together. Emily, her clothes still stained with river mud, found herself changed too. In risking her life for a stranger, with Maple as her anchor, she'd found the strength to believe again. Not just in tomorrow, but in herself. That night, as the city exhaled, Emily stroked Maple's nose, whispering, "Thank you for everything." Maple blinked slowly, leaning into the touch. The storm was over, but the work and the healing had only just begun. The days that followed the rescue at the river carried a different energy. The people of Tulsa, once overwhelmed by fear and loss, now walked with a bit more hope in their step. Stories of Maple's courage rippled through the city. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She had become a symbol. Emily was pulled into the whirlwind right alongside her. Every day brought new invitations. Could she bring Maple to the elementary school, to the Red Cross tent, to the shelter on the south side where children still woke from nightmares? Emily found herself standing before a crowd of children on the cracked playground of a battered elementary school. Some wore borrowed clothes, others still looked lost, but every face lit up when Maple appeared, ears pricked, eyes gentle. Teachers set up a row of folding chairs, and Emily did her best to answer a flood of questions. Did she really save that baby? Can horses cry? Does Maple like peanut butter sandwiches? The laughter and noise bounced against broken windows, the weight of tragedy momentarily forgotten. Children flocked to Maple, small hands reaching, braiding wildflowers into her mane, tracing her scars as if to reassure themselves that healing was possible. Emily stood nearby, feeling the strange, quiet joy of being part of something bigger. No longer an outsider wandering in the ruins, but a bridge between the pain of the past and the hope of what could come next. But not every heart healed so quickly. In the shadow of a condemned house, Emily noticed a figure watching the commotion. Arms crossed, hair tangled, face hidden under the brim of a borrowed baseball cap. A teenage girl, maybe 15, leaned against the porch rail, eyes full of defiance and loneliness. Emily recognized the look, a fortress built from grief. She slipped away from the crowd, Maple trailing behind her, and approached slowly. "Hey," Emily said, stopping a few feet away. "This is Maple. She likes to meet new people." The girl shrugged, refusing to meet her gaze. "I'm fine. I don't need anyone," she muttered, voice thin, hollow. Maple, as if sensing the truth beneath the bravado, stepped forward, lowering her massive head. The girl flinched, but Maple simply waited, breathing slow and steady, offering nothing but quiet presence. Minutes ticked by. At last, the girl reached out, tentative, brushing her fingertips against Maple's nose. Her shoulders sagged. She whispered, "I lost everything. My dog, my room, all of it." Her voice broke. Maple pressed closer, warm and solid, the silence filled with understanding. Emily said nothing. There was nothing to fix, only space to share. "What's your name?" Emily asked softly. "Sophia." The girl's chin trembled. Emily nodded, sitting down on the steps beside her. You know, Maple lost her whole family too, she said, voice gentle. It's why she gets it. Why she won't leave you alone until you believe you matter. For a long time, Sophia said nothing, but when she finally stood, she looked a little lighter, a little less alone. Can I come see her again? She asked, hope flickering in her eyes. Any time, Emily promised. The community's embrace grew wider with every passing day. At the shelter, people brought gifts. Carrots and apples for Maple, cookies for Emily, thank you cards covered in childish scribbles. Someone started painting a mural on the gym's outside wall. A swirl of wild colors, Maple galloping beneath a stormy sky, children laughing, hands reaching out. The mayor stopped by, standing awkwardly in the mud, and asked Emily if she and Maple would help dedicate a new memorial garden. It's for all the people and animals we lost, he explained, and for those who saved us. Emily felt overwhelmed as she stood at the garden's edge, surrounded by townsfolk and volunteers. The soil was dark and rich, dotted with the first fragile shoots of wildflowers and dogwood trees. The mayor cleared his throat, his voice rough as he read a list of names. Some lost, some saved, all remembered. Emily placed her hand on Maple's neck, feeling the strength that had carried them both through so much. After the ceremony, people lingered to share stories about the tornado, about the night of the river, about the way hope had arrived on 4 muddy hooves. Kids chased each other between the new flower beds, and grown-ups smiled through tears. For the first time, Emily realized she was no longer just healing for herself. She was helping others heal too. One afternoon, Emily and Maple visited the old neighborhood on the city's south side, now a quilt of tarps and plywood and makeshift tents. She watched as Maple found a little boy sobbing in the shadow of a broken fence, his stuffed bear clutched tight. The mare knelt, lowering her head, and let the boy curl against her shoulder, his cries fading to hiccups. The sight pierced Emily. Maple's gift was more than instinct. It was something deep, a silent invitation to trust again, to let go, to rebuild. Emily felt herself changing too. Where once she'd flinched from her own pain, now she saw it echoed in the faces around her. 1,000 silent stories, each one heavy but less lonely when shared. She realized that with Maple she had become a bridge, not just for Sophia or the boy by the fence, but for anyone searching for a way back to hope. That evening, as the sun dipped below the patchwork skyline, the mayor announced plans for the garden, a living memorial open to all, a place for the city to remember, to grieve, and to hope. Maple and Emily stood together as children braided wildflowers into Maple's mane. The community's laughter, stories, and tears blended into the gentle dusk. Emily gazed at Maple, understanding that the healing they'd found was now a gift they could share. In that fragile, beautiful moment, the past and the future met, and for the first time, Emily felt truly at home. "We're not alone anymore," she whispered, resting her head against Maple's warm shoulder. Maple snorted softly, as if to say, "I know," and somewhere in the quiet of the evening, hope took root and began to grow. It began with a stillness, a heavy, expectant hush that settled over Tulsa as dusk approached, painting the battered city in shades of purple and deepening blue. People paused, looking up from shattered porches and plywood windows, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Emily sensed it before the first rumble of thunder. She noticed the change in Maple's posture, the way the mare's ears flicked back and forth, muscles quivering beneath her chestnut coat. Emily was helping to tidy up the makeshift kitchen at the shelter when the lights flickered, then went out with a sigh. A moment later, the sky cracked open. Lightning ripped the clouds, followed by thunder so sharp it rattled the cots. Rain hammered the roof, pounding so hard Emily couldn't hear herself think. People hurried to secure their few belongings, comfort children, and brace for another long night. Maple's anxiety mounted with each burst of thunder. She paced the entryway, hooves striking the linoleum, nostrils flared. Emily, already soaked from running outside to check on the volunteers, came back and knelt by Maple's side, her heart tight with dread. "Easy, girl," she murmured, stroking Maple's trembling neck. "It's just another storm. We'll get through this one, too." But deep down, Emily knew this wasn't just another storm. The wind howled louder than before, pelting the gym windows with branches and debris. The shelter's staff rushed to organize everyone. Blankets, flashlights, whispered words of comfort. Then, in the chaos, a teenager ran in, shouting, "The old warehouse by the train tracks. There's someone trapped inside. It's Hannah. She's pregnant. They can't get her out." Emily's breath caught. The warehouse was on the far side of the neighborhood, low-lying and flood-prone, now threatened by rising water and collapsing walls. For a moment, her mind froze, terror swirling with memory. She'd only just found her footing after the last disaster. Did she really have the strength to run headlong into danger again? Maple didn't hesitate. The mare pulled at her halter, eyes wide, muscles tense. Emily swallowed hard, her choice crystallizing in an instant. She couldn't let fear win, not when someone needed her. "Okay, girl," she whispered, voice shaking. "Lead the way. We'll do it together." They plunged into the storm, wind screaming around them, rain blinding. Maple charged ahead, navigating the dark, debris-strewn streets by instinct, hooves skidding on slick pavement. Emily followed, ducking flying branches, slipping on flooded asphalt, every step a battle between panic and resolve. Flashes of lightning illuminated their path, turning puddles into silver pools and outlining Maple's determined form in harsh, beautiful relief. At the warehouse, chaos reigned. Water lapped at the door, swirling with garbage and jagged wood. Inside, a chorus of voices shouted for help. Emily could see the outlines of 3 volunteers struggling to move fallen beams. Someone screamed, Hannah's voice, high and raw, echoing through the metal shell of the building. Without waiting, Emily shouted, "I'm here! Maple's here! We'll help!" The volunteers gaped as Maple pressed forward, shouldering her way inside. Ignoring the water rising around her fetlocks, Emily crawled over a collapsed pallet, flashlight clenched between her teeth, heart pounding. She found Hannah wedged beneath a sagging shelf, hands clutching her belly, face twisted in pain. Emily dropped to her knees, grabbing for Hannah's hand. "I'm going to get you out, okay? I promise." Maple loomed behind her, blocking some of the wind and rain, offering a living shield. Emily shouted for help, and together, with the last of their strength, the volunteers and Maple shifted the wreckage, inch by inch, the beams groaning with every movement. Suddenly, the roof above them sagged, a support giving way with a terrible screech. "Move now!" Emily barked, grabbing Hannah and dragging her clear as Maple pulled back, ears flat against her skull. The group tumbled out the door just as the roof collapsed, sending a waterfall of wood and metal crashing to the floor. Outside, Emily gasped for breath, rain plastering her hair to her face. Hannah sobbed, clutching her belly, but managed to say, "Thank you. You saved us." Emily knelt beside her, trembling, and looked up at Maple, muddy, drenched, wild-eyed, but alive. Emily realized her own hands were shaking, not just from adrenaline, but from the sheer weight of choosing courage over safety. The ambulance arrived, sirens wailing. Medics rushed Hannah away. Emily and Maple stood in the rain, the storm slowly moving off, lightning growing fainter as it limped toward the edge of town. Volunteers gathered around them, murmuring thanks, some hugging Emily, others simply reaching out to stroke Maple's sodden neck. As the adrenaline faded, Emily was struck by a wave of emotion, relief, exhaustion, and something fierce and liberating. She realized she wasn't running from her pain anymore. She was running toward it, meeting it head-on, and finding herself changed each time she faced it. They walked home in the gray half-light, rain finally giving way to a soft drizzle. Emily slipped her arm around Maple's neck, resting her forehead against the mare's warm, damp coat. "We did it. We really did it," she whispered, laughter and tears mingling in her voice. Back at the shelter, the lights flickered on and cheers erupted. People clapped Emily on the back, children rushed to Maple's side, and even the most stoic adults wiped tears from their eyes. The storm had tested them again, but they'd faced it together and emerged stronger, more whole. That night, as Emily lay in her cot, she listened to the hush of the receding storm. She no longer felt alone or afraid. With Maple as her anchor, she knew she could face anything and help others do the same. The city outside was battered but unbroken, a living testament to what hope and courage could build, even in the fiercest winds. And somewhere deep inside, Emily understood. She was no longer just surviving. She was becoming someone new, someone unafraid to answer the call, no matter how dark the storm. The second storm's memory clung to the city, but Tulsa was learning to breathe again. In the cool mornings, the air tasted of wet grass and sawdust. Broken windows and fallen signs were gradually replaced by the bright colors of new plywood, painted murals, and wildflowers poking through piles of dirt. A slow rhythm of hope pulsed beneath the noise of hammers and the laughter of children discovering forgotten toys in the weeds. Emily awoke before sunrise most days, the habit of crisis still stitched into her bones. Maple grazed quietly in the sanctuary's field, what everyone now called Maple's Meadow. The city council had declared the once ruined stretch of land a sanctuary, open to anyone who needed healing. Volunteers came daily, hauling lumber and saplings, planting gardens, and mending the fences that had once been splintered by wind and grief. On the day of the meadow's official opening, people gathered beneath a sprawling oak, their faces lined with fatigue but glowing with cautious hope. There was no stage, just a circle of folding chairs, picnic blankets, and kids perched atop hay bales. Maple stood at the center, her mane carefully braided with wildflowers, patient and still as children wove between her legs. Emily felt the eyes of the crowd settle on her. She clutched a battered note card, the words she'd rehearsed blurring in her mind. A hush fell as she stepped forward. Emily searched the faces, a patchwork of those she'd met along the way, the boy she'd pulled from the porch, Sophia with her newly shorn hair and shy smile, the old woman rescued from the barn, even Hannah, round-bellied and glowing. Every story seemed to echo in the silent space between breaths. Emily took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she began. "When the storm hit, I was lost," she said, not reading from her card. "I ran from my pain, from my life, thinking that maybe if I was alone, nothing could hurt me again. But then I met Maple. I thought I was saving her. But the truth is, she saved me first." A few people sniffled. Maple shifted, as if listening. Emily pressed on, her words gathering strength. "This meadow, this place, is proof that healing doesn't happen in isolation. Every rescue, every act of kindness was an act of healing, not just for those we helped, but for ourselves. I learned that true strength isn't about standing alone. but about reaching out, about letting someone, or some horse, see you at your lowest and still standing by your side. Emily paused, her throat tight. She looked at Sophia, who wiped a tear and managed a wobbly smile. Maple showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's how we heal, how we build something better from what's broken. I hope this meadow is a place where you can come, share your story, grieve what you've lost, and find hope again. Because I did. We all did. The crowd erupted in gentle applause. Emily felt a surge of gratitude so fierce it nearly unsteadied her. After her speech, people came forward, some with words, some with just a touch of the hand or a quick hug. Children crowded Maple, whispering secrets into her mane, pressing flowers behind her ears. Volunteers led planting efforts, their hands dirty and hearts light. The energy was different now, less frantic, more steady, like a city that had learned how to carry sorrow and joy in the same arms. Later, as dusk painted Maple's meadow gold, Emily found herself alone under the old oak. She brushed Maple's mane, the familiar soothing ritual grounding her. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not just for the pain, but for the gratitude that filled her chest until it ached. Maple nuzzled her, breath warm and sweet, eyes deep with understanding. Emily whispered, "I thought I was here to survive, but you taught me how to live again. We did this. Together." Maple blinked slowly, pressing her head gently into Emily's shoulder, as if to say, "Yes, together." Around them, the meadow buzzed with quiet celebration. Someone played a battered guitar, laughter rolled across the grass, and families planted the first dogwood trees beside wooden signs marked with names. Those lost, those found, those who had become part of this strange, beautiful tapestry of survival. As the sun dipped below the city's jagged horizon, Emily's mind replayed the journey. Each terrifying moment, every small victory. The nights she'd felt hollow, and the mornings when Maple's gentle nudge had forced her out of bed. She understood now. Every act of courage, every time she'd chosen hope, had been a way of healing her own wounds, even as she reached out to others. She thought about what true strength looked like, not the kind that hides pain or builds walls, but the kind that asks for help, that lets people in. She remembered the day she'd met Maple in the ruined street, both of them lost, battered, but still standing. She realized the storms, the rescues, the fear and the hope had forged something unbreakable between them. Emily closed her eyes, letting the soft night wrap around her, and for the first time, she felt the weight of her grief lessen. She knew she was exactly where she needed to be. Maple's meadow was no longer just a place. It was a promise, a living reminder that no one had to face their storms alone. As families packed up, children hugged Maple one last time, and the lanterns flickered on the porch of the community shed. Emily made a silent vow. She would stay. Tulsa was home now. Maple's meadow would welcome anyone needing a safe place to fall apart and begin again. She and Maple would help others find what they'd found: connection, healing, and a hope that could weather any storm. The journey wasn't about survival anymore. It was about building something lasting, a legacy of compassion from the rubble of loss. Emily looked at Maple, and together they watched the last light fade, knowing that what they'd built would shine for years to come. A year had passed since the night the first tornado carved a scar through Tulsa. The city was different now, patched, rebuilt, still healing. Maple's meadow had grown into a sanctuary, its wildflowers tumbling through the grass, its dogwood trees thick with new leaves and pink-white blossoms. Even the air seemed changed, sweeter, lighter, filled with the laughter and music of a community determined to remember and to keep moving forward. The annual Maples Day festival began at sunrise, drawing people from every corner of the city and beyond. Kids painted their faces with bright streaks of color. Old friends embraced, strangers shook hands, and the smell of barbecue and cinnamon bread swirled over the meadow. Tables creaked under the weight of casseroles and pies. Banners stretched between the trees, reading, "We remember, we rebuild, we ride on." Maple stood at the heart of it all, her mane braided with flowers, eyes shining as children wove garlands and tied ribbons to her tail. Emily found herself in the thick of the celebration, hugged by a dozen people before she could cross the meadow, pressed into helping judge a pie contest, and pulled into games of tag by laughing children. She'd become part of the fabric of Tulsa, no longer just the girl who wandered into the city's worst night, but the woman who stayed, who helped build something lasting. She wore jeans smudged with dirt and a t-shirt from last year's festival, her hair tied back, a streak of flour across one cheek. She felt alive, steady, rooted, content in a way she'd once thought impossible. As midday approached, a hush swept over the crowd. The mayor, a sturdy woman with kind eyes, took the microphone and called everyone together at the new memorial garden. Now a riot of color, the names of the lost etched into a curved stone wall. Emily stepped up beside Maple, feeling the gentle pressure of the mayor's shoulder, the warmth of the sun on her back. She saw familiar faces. Noah, now taller and smiling. Sophia, hair bright with dye, waving from the edge of the crowd. Hannah, cradling her healthy infant. Volunteers, neighbors, new families. Emily cleared her throat, heart pounding. She looked down at Maple, then back at the crowd. "I used to think hope was something you found," she began, voice steady, "or something that just happened to lucky people. But I know now that hope is something we make. Sometimes it's a single act, a helping hand, a gentle word, or the courage to go back into the storm for someone you've never met. Sometimes it's just showing up, again and again, until you start to believe you belong." She paused, searching for the right words. Maple showed me that bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent, standing beside someone in their grief, carrying them when they can't walk alone. Every person here has been a part of that. Every rescue, every meal, every night spent comforting a stranger. You turned a broken place into a sanctuary. You made hope real. As Emily spoke, she watched the crowd nod, some wiping tears, others clutching hands. Children clustered around Maple, braiding flowers into her mane. The little boy she'd saved that first night brought her a painting, a wild swirl of blue and brown, with a tiny stick figure and a horse in the center. Emily knelt, hugging him close, her voice catching. "Thank you. You all taught me that healing grows when it's shared. This meadow, this day, is proof that every act of kindness matters. It changes things. It ripples out and comes back to you 1,000 times over." The mayor stepped forward, presenting Emily with a simple plaque. "Maple's Meadow, a place to heal, a place to hope." Emily smiled, eyes shining. She pressed her face to Maple's neck, breathing in the familiar scent of grass and warm fur. The festival rolled on, bright and joyful. Emily wandered through the crowd, stopping to chat, to comfort, to laugh. She watched as new families arrived, some nervous and quiet, clutching their children's hands. She saw a little girl, wide-eyed and trembling, hesitate at the edge of the field. Maple walked to her, lowering her big head so the child could touch her nose. In an instant, the girl wrapped her arms around Maple's neck, and the weight in her father's eyes seemed to lift. Emily felt her heart squeeze. She understood. This was the gift Maple carried. and she was only the beginning. As afternoon melted into dusk, lanterns blinked to life around the field, casting the meadow in golden light. People gathered for one last story, and Emily stood before them, stronger, clearer, no longer afraid. She looked at the faces around her, old and new, and spoke from her heart. Let this meadow remind us, hope isn't just surviving the storm, it's what you do after. It's the courage to keep loving, to keep building, to keep believing even when you're scared. It's reaching out when someone is lost and refusing to let go. That's how we heal. That's how we rebuild, together. A quiet settled, the kind that comes after deep meaning has been spoken. Emily smiled, wiping her eyes. She felt Maple's breath on her shoulder, steady and sure, and she knew she'd never be alone again. The cycle of healing was real. What she and Maple had begun was carried now by everyone who'd stepped into the meadow, everyone who'd chosen compassion over fear. As the celebration ended, Emily and Maple walked together into the dusk, laughter and music fading behind them, lanterns winking in the dark. She looked back once, seeing families gathered beneath the trees, friends holding each other, children chasing fireflies in the tall grass. In that moment, Emily knew the story would never truly end. Hope, once sparked, keeps moving forward, galloping on, handed from heart to heart, growing stronger with every act of courage and kindness. So let Maple's Meadow be a reminder. When you see someone lost in their own storm, be the hand that reaches out, the heart that doesn't turn away. That's how hope survives. That's how we rebuild, together. And as the moon rose over Tulsa, Maple and Emily became part of the living promise they'd created, a testament that hope, once planted, never stops growing.